All right, continuing on, we have done CRUD for just the cohort so far. Now I want to do nested CRUD where I have more than one resource. And what you'll notice here, if I go back a couple ways, it goes /cars/sedans. I think this is another way that they're trying to identify like what type of car it is, because there are multiple types of cars. There are coupes, there are sedans, there are SUVs. Like those are all types of cars, right? So I think what they're doing is instead of putting the actual number inside of here, they're just taking like the name of it within it. But you can kind of see it's like cars/sedans/Acura. Same thing here. I want to do cohort/2. I could also do like the name of it. I could do like Kilo, Platoon, or Bravo or something, and then /students. Now I want to take a look. I wanted to go just to /students, and it obviously doesn't exist yet. We want to be able to see all the students for our particular cohort. So that's the read. We want to create one for like attendance purposes. We want to update them in case they change their name, and then delete them in case they decide to leave. So we're going to follow that same pattern, but it's just a little bit of added complexity. Again, we're following the same. We really just are following the same pattern. So I'm going to create another path to / basically it's this. Just copy. It's going to be /cohort ID and then /students. That's it. I want to go to student details. I'm going to name it to, student list perhaps. We'll name it student list as well. All right, so what we have is /cohorts/some number/students, and then what's going to happen then is we're going to pass you up to the views file, specifically the student list method. All right, so I have all my methods down over here. I've just decided to shrink them so that we have a little bit more room to read. And let's do this again. We're going to do def student list. It's going to take in a request. Also, it's going to take in a cohort ID. First things first, I want to find that cohort from the database. Cohort.objects.getID equals cohort ID. But I also want to find something else. I want to find all the corresponding students, so I can do cohort.students.all. And then I'm going to render out this over here. Same thing as before. I'm going to create a templates folder. Within there, I'm going to have a students folder and a student list. Now, I'm going to be passing two other things. I'm going to be passing the cohort off to the HTML file and a list of students. So again, URLs, goes to views, goes to templates, if I can find it. Okay, so within templates, I'm going to create a new folder called students. Within there, I'm going to create a file called students list.html. And what I've got is all students for the cohort name. I'm going to iterate over each one of the students. Again, this cohort and this students over here comes from line number 8, cohort and students. I'm finding stuff inside the database and I'm passing it off to the view. Sorry, to the HTML template. And I'm just going to get rid of this for right now. It's going to take me to, let's just go to / and then student name and then N for. See if this works. Please work. Nice. So what I've done is I have /cohorts/some number/students. Hit the URL /cohorts/some number/students, and then I'm going to pass you off to the students list inside of views.py. I get the cohort, I get all the students, I create the HTML file, and I pass off a couple variables to it. Once I jump into the HTML file, it just says all students for, and then insert the cohort name here. I'm iterating over each one of the students using embedded Python, creating a bunch of list elements to just display them. Let's do first name, and let's also do last name. Why not? Student.last name. refresh. All right, so I got 4 people inside of Platoon. These people are actually still working in tech if you want to find them. I don't know where he worked. Where's LaFalls work, Rod? Merchandise.
Well, yeah, he was out until this.
Okay, cool. Raise.com, DTC, somewhere.
Power where he started.
Yeah, he's jumped jobs every like 6 months, so that's a good thing. And what you'll notice here is when I hover over each one of them, they don't take me anywhere. But I'm able to do the first half of read. I can see all of the students for a particular cohort. Now I want to see the details of each particular student. All right, going back to the way things were, I'm going to create this particular URL. I'm going to build this up. Whenever I click on this, I want you to take me to student detail. And I need to pass you 2 things. One of them is the cohort ID and the student ID so I can view individual things about them. If I go over here and I try to refresh, it blows up because student detail, that named URL doesn't exist quite yet. All right, easy enough. We'll chase that down. We need to create the next route. I'm going to add that right underneath. And what you'll notice is before we used to call everything PK, right? Like int PK. PK worked when you only had one resource, meaning one table in the database you were looking stuff off of. But now that you have 2, since you have to find 2 things inside of the database, imagine if you had this PK and then like something else. I want this to be as like dummy-proof as possible. So what I'm doing is I'm naming the first thing the cohort ID because that is actually what we're looking up, and the second thing called student ID. So anytime anybody makes a request to /cohort/some number/students/some number, I'm going to take you off to the student detail method within the views file. And the named route is student detail. That's this thing right over here on line 5 inside of student list.html. Moving on to tab number 2, views.py. I'm going to do def student detail. Takes in a request, takes in a cohort ID, and it also takes in a student ID. This is the new one. So I'm going to find the cohort first. I'm also going to find the student using the same thing, student.objects.get ID equals student ID. And I'm going to render out probably a little bit of information back on the student. So I'm going to call this student detail.html. I'm still going to pass in the cohort. I'm also going to pass in the student. And let's jump over here. We're going to create a student detail. I am going to get rid of this right now. Get rid of this. All right, let's take a look at what we've done. I added a new path for /cohort/some number/student/some number. It's going to take me to the student detail method inside of views. There's my views.py. It takes me to student detail. I passed in 2 things: the cohort ID, that's found right over here, then the student ID, which comes over right also from right there. I find the cohort, I find the student, and then I take you to the student detail page. And I'm passing in 2 variables. One of them is cohort, one of them is student. And the value is cohort found on line 11 and student found on line 12. Then the student detail HTML page just says first name, last name, member of some cohort, in person, whether it's true or false, hometown, branch, I'm just displaying information out at this point. So if all goes well, I can go to /students. And when I hover over this, you'll notice on the bottom left-hand corner, it's /cohorts/2/students/2. That's their ID inside the database. If I click on this, oh my God. Okay, so let's not freak out. It says name student is not defined. Let's jump back over here. It says student is not defined. Line 13. Anybody know what I should do?
Have the models import for student.
Yep. So we brought in cohort, but we haven't brought in student yet. Let's see if this refreshes, and there it goes. Michael False, member of Platoon, he was in person, Chicago, Illinois, branch of services, U.S. Air Force. Right now we have an edit student that doesn't do it. So we're able to view all the students. We're able to view an individual student. Let's see if we can edit this particular student. Yeah, let's edit this student first. We're going to create another one, another path. All we did was we added just the /edit at the very end. It's going to take me to the views file, specifically the edit student method, and the name route is going to be edit student. I'm going to have this over here back to right. One second. So I have this edit student at the very bottom now. It's taking me to this URL. I need to pass in two things, specifically the cohort and the student ID, so that we can build out this URL. It's going to take in the cohort and the student ID. Whenever I click on it, I want to be taken to the edit student method. So I'm going to do that next. And just copy this around. We'll go over each one, but it'll look very similar, you'll notice. We've got the edit student. It takes in a cohort and a student ID. Again, those come directly from the URL. We're going to find the cohort. We're going to find the student. We're not going to use get object or 404. We're going to find the student. And there are two things again. The edit could be a get request just to display the form of the student, and it also could be a post request to actually update the student. We've got to create the student form. And from there, let's take a look. We need to create two things. One of them is the student form itself, and the other one is the student form.html. I'm going to create that HTML file first. Student form. Form.html. Inside of there, I'm going to just grab this. It looks like I need to bring in student form. It hasn't been brought in quite yet. So I'm going to bring in student form and actually create the form itself. So inside of .forms, remember we commented this out a little bit earlier. Over the break, I added a few things. I created the student form, and I'm basically saying these are the types of fields that I want to be able to update. The cohort, the first name update, first name, last name, hometown, and person service. So this generates the form magically for me, which is nice and terrible at the same time. And if we go back over here and I refresh this page, there's an edit student, and if I hover over it, it goes to /cohort/2/student/2/edit. That one is built from student detail. I'm building out the URL here, edit student. I don't know what that means. Let's jump over into URLs now. There's that edit student. It takes in two things that you need to pass in, the cohort and the student ID. And I'm passing in the cohort and the student ID. That's where this is being built from. When I click on this, it takes me over to here, renders out the form for me, and it says edit student, we can change the student, like which cohort they were in, but this is not terribly descriptive, so we'll keep it for right now. So his name is actually Michael LaFalce, and we fill out everything based off of what was already inside the database. When I press save here, hopefully, if all goes well, this becomes a post request, creates an instance of the form with things that you put in. If it's valid, it'll find the student in the database and update it, and then you're going to save it, and then you're going to redirect them back to student detail, which we created a little bit earlier. Hopefully all goes well. Save. Takes me to student/2 again. There's Michael LaFalce rather than Mike LaFalce. And I'm going to just do a bunch of bang signs at the end. And then I am able to update. So we're able to view all the students by going to /cohort/2/students for all the students. View an individual one. We're able to update them. And now we can also delete the student as well. Within here, I'm going to create a new form, similar to the things that we had a little bit earlier. Change this to a horizontal role. And I've got a delete student method. So whenever I hit submit on this, it's going to take me to the delete cohort URL, and I'm going to be passing in two things, the cohort ID and student ID. And whenever I click it, it's going to actually go through and delete. So I need to add that route. So again, /cohort/some number /student/some number. Whenever it comes to the /delete, it's delete student right here. I'm going to go to the views.py, go to the delete student method. It's going to take a request, cohort ID, student ID, and then we're going to actually go ahead and delete that student. If the request is a post, which it will be because it's a form that we specified that it's going to be a post, we're going to get the student from the database, student.objects.get, ID is student ID. We're going to delete them, and we're going to redirect them to the student list, particularly the one that's this particular cohort ID. Let's see if this works. All right, we have a delete student button over here. If I delete this, hopefully I won't be able to view students anymore. Student number 2, redirect me to Bravo Platoon. Let's click on Conlin. Let's go back to student number 2. You'll notice that this doesn't exist in the database anymore. Deleted it. Am I going too fast? Okay. The last bit that I want to do is I want to go back to /students, and I want to create the ability to create a new, create somebody. First things first, let's go to, I think it's student list. And at the very end here, I want to create an href for creating a student. So I'm going to grab this, just change a few things. I want add a student. Or I don't know what URL it's going to be. Probably a new student or something. New student. I do need to pass in the cohort, but I don't need to pass in the student because I don't know what it is. And if I go back over here and refresh, it'll blow up because new student is not found. Makes sense. We don't actually have a path for that quite yet. So I'm going to add this. Just add it right there. So /cohorts/some number /student/new. What you'll notice, I'm going to put the new before the student ID number, because if I put it below, I'm going to interpret that as the student ID number is new rather than some actual number. So whenever anybody makes a request to that, I'm going to take you to views and then new student. So I'm going to def new student, which is going to be more or less the same as the edit method, but slightly different. All right, so it's going to take in a cohort ID, going to, if it's a GET request, it's just going to render out the student form and then take me to the student form, which we created a little bit earlier for the edit. If it's a post request, then it's going to check whether or not you've entered everything you need to do, save it to a student object, and then you're going to save it and then redirect them, hopefully, to that new student that's been created. Let's try this one more time. Okay. Add a student. Takes me to /cohort/2/student/new. Takes me to this. Maybe I will do cohort number 2. So we're going to remain with Bravo Platoon. Who else was in Bravo Platoon? Scott. Chicago. He was in person. Green. And hopefully if I save this, it'll take me to student/8, member of Bravo Platoon, in person, Chicago, Illinois, and green. So now we're able to view all the cohorts. We can edit the cohort if we want to. We can delete this cohort, but I'm not going to do that. We can create a new cohort. We can see all the students, which I don't have a link for, all the students for Bravo Platoon 1, 2, 3, and we're able to CRUD them as well. So this is a little bit of a primer on how nested CRUD works. For today's curriculum, I'm going to do a couple things. One of them is I would go through this tutorial and rewatch this video if you need to. Just kind of make sure that you understand what's happening at each step. Yes, you could copy and paste and this would work, but then you would get absolutely no education whatsoever. And it's not really about like what does the end result look like, because anybody can go online and copy and paste tutorials. It's basically how well can you explain it. So just because your stuff works, if you can't explain what's going on, then it's going to be really bad for you. And then I have 2 challenges. One of them is called beer reviews, and one of them is called meetups. These are both nested CRUD ones. We're going to have users with login and login like we did yesterday. We're going to have a beer and a review. And the same thing here with the Django meetup. You have groups with many different events. Any questions? Right. Let me stop recording here and we'll jump into